Hello, welcome to another Purple Insider Extra. Matthew Coller here, along with Sam Ekstrom, and we have lots of things to react to involving the Minnesota Vikings offseason, including that Danielle Hunter is not only staying, but staying on his current contract, which, Sam, we really did not expect. We expected this to move one way or another in the direction of either a long-term contract extension for Danielle Hunter or for him to be traded. And now it looks like the Vikings will play out his contract and potentially transfer some money from his roster bonus to create extra cap space. I have to say, the contract was set up with movement, with the idea, right? And yet the Vikings just decided, like many things this offseason, to let it pass on by.
The stand pat offseason continues. That was the theme with the Kirk Cousins 1-year extension. That was the theme with the number of expensive veterans restructuring to stick around. And that's the case now with Danielle Hunter. This, again, and not only does it potentially kick some money down the road, but it kicks a decision down the road another year. The Vikings did not really solve their Danielle Hunter issue last offseason. They just delayed the decision by moving the money a year further. And now the Vikings, once again, are going to be in a decision to negotiate with Danielle Hunter 1 year from now. I mean, his cap hit is like $8-9 million in 2023. His base salary, I think, is under $5 million. There's no way that he's going to agreeably play for that low a value when he probably feels he's a $20 million plus pass rusher. So you're facing a likely negotiation down the road unless you can find a way to add extra years and dollars in the coming weeks to that contract. But it's curious. It's curious when you could have, cleared up more cap space for free agency by renegotiating and restructuring this thing earlier, and you could have been more of a player in free agency. Now you are kind of stuck with the bargain bin. Once again, it's the same story as last year. You're just trying to make these $1, $2, $3 million signings to sneak it under the cap. And you don't have a lot of cap space now, at least at the moment, because you are on the hook for 26 million big ones. That's a decision that I did not expect.
Yeah, and what's interesting here about the Kirk Cousins decision to extend him and then Danielle Hunter to play on his present contract is that they tried to trade both players. There were reports out there that they were taking offers from teams, and clearly those offers did not satisfy what they felt Kirk Cousins and Danielle Hunter were worth in return. But now with Hunter and Cousins back, they have to go after it, right? They have to try to win. They have to look to free agency and add whatever talent they possibly can. But the problem with that is last year they did the same thing where they went hunting in the bargain bin, tried to make some splash moves like bringing in Dalvin Tomlinson and Patrick Peterson, tried to fill the other spots cheaply, and that didn't get them where they wanted to go. And this roster has a lot more needs than just a Danielle Hunter coming back at a pass rusher position. They need several cornerbacks, more edge rushers, lots of things on the offensive line still, a center, a guard. And we're still not 100% sure if someone like Ezra Cleveland is going to be above average at left guard. I mean, there's improvements here, and not even mentioning the depth that need to be made. And yet, even if they move money from Danielle Hunter, there's still not enough space to fill all of those needs. So now it feels like, Sam, the pressure has to be back on, going from this idea to potentially rebuild the entire thing to now, hey, it's got to be playoffs. It's got to be deep in the playoffs in order for this all to be a success.
Yeah, it sure seems that way. You're buying back into your quarterback that is routinely around 500. You're buying back into some defensive veterans that proved last year that they are not good enough to kind of carry an entire defense that fell again to the bottom quarter of the league. And they're basically just going to run this thing back with some different schemes, same players, and hope for better results. That's going to take a lot of injury luck. It's going to take a lot of fumble luck, close game luck. They're going to need to have everything come together for them with the stars aligning. And could it happen? Sure, but your percentages are low. Whereas if you had broken the thing down and maybe built it up for the future and made some longer term moves, your percentages would have gone up drastically in the future. And the Vikings they're playing on very thin ice right now with this salary cap, with this aging roster, and still numerous holes. I mean, we're talking about, wanting youth, but some of the youth that they're going to be playing, and presumably they're going to be relying on some draft picks with as many holes as they have, and second and third stringers that have been on the roster before. It's not quite the kind of youth that I think we were talking about. So don't know how they're going to fill out these starting spots as of now, but there is still time for Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah to make moves. It's just that, are they going to be inspiring moves? Are they going to be, cost-effective moves? We'll wait to find out.
And I think that not doing anything to help themselves long term here is maybe the biggest frustration for Vikings fans about this offseason. And that even relates to Danielle Hunter. Long term, if you sign him to a contract extension now, and you are rolling the dice a little bit on his injury history, but when you look at the past production, he's been one of the best defensive ends in the NFL. You probably put him top 10 defensive ends. And now, if he has another good year, how do the Vikings afford him in the future, especially if Kirk Cousins is going to remain on the roster in 2023 at over $30 million on the cap? Making that math work is going to be pretty difficult. And Hunter, if he has another good season, will not be a bargain for the Vikings. It'll be pay me absolute top of the line money or move me somewhere else. So they didn't get him from a long-term perspective there, but also didn't get anything for him. So now it's very possible that he could just be playing out his last year as a Minnesota Viking. And I think that's a confusing approach. The other thing is too, that they have restructured deals. They've restructured Adam Thielen's deal. And when they start adding void years, Sam, I start thinking, isn't this something that Rick Spielman would do? And isn't this something that teams that consider themselves to be true Super Bowl contenders are really the only ones who should be doing? Everyone else should be trying to get themselves not just cap compliant, but cap healthy. And I would say that Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah was left in a very difficult position with contracts like Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, that were very high. There's dead money from Anthony Barr, dead cap money from Kyle Rudolph still hanging around. So it's a thin needle to thread. And that's why it felt like the approach was going to be a complete overhaul rather than running it all back. And I guess I'm having trouble figuring out where to set the expectation for a team that's been kind of painted into a corner of saying we have to try to win in Kevin O'Connell's first year.
Yeah, it is hard to expect, I think, more than we've seen the last 2 years based on this roster. This is not all that strong of a roster. Now, they are somewhat deep offensively with skill players, a quarterback that can usually get them the ball, but an offensive line they can't protect. They've got a defensive line that's very thin and probably can't apply a ton of pressure. And they've got a secondary that can't guard anybody. So, of the high positional value areas on the team, I would say like the passing game and potentially the running game, which isn't that high value, pretty strong. But then the others are pretty weak right now. So certainly the fans, based on this approach, should expect the team to be competitive, and the team needs to pursue that. But it's just hard to see how that gets done. I guess if there's anything that this new regime has done, they haven't pushed anything kind of beyond, this year or 2023. It seems like they're operating kind of a 2-year window now. Like if they do well this year, then they have, maybe Hunter back in 2023, Cousins back in 2023, where again, they'll be faced with these decisions. It's kind of a 2-year window now. And along the way, can they add some young pieces that can rise up and supplement this roster? That's going to be critical, and drafting in April is going to be enormous. If they can't draft impact players that can be effective this year and next year, I think they're going to be in for a rude awakening.
It's all feeling very familiar this offseason for Vikings fans of what they've seen the last 2 years. We have longer conversations about that on the Purple Insider podcast. Go find that wherever you get your podcast, and the new purpleinsider.com website. We have revamped purpleinsider.com. It looks beautiful now, so go check that out and subscribe here to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you all later. Purple Insider Extra.